We're on the phone visiting with Lance Pearson, the Rapid City Central High School head wrestling coach. Hey, Lance, thanks for joining us here on Black Hills TV today.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk about our program. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Of course, with no track and field events going on and a lot of other spring sports, it's a good time to take a pause and talk some wrestling.
You bet. Yeah, we, looking back on all of this stuff, we feel pretty fortunate that we were able to kind of get our season completed and be able to do what we wanted to do this year. Obviously, with the virus that's going around, our sport would have very easily could have been a pretty prevalent place for that to be spread, rather quickly. So
sure.
We were pretty fortunate that we got our season in and we were able to compete at the state tournament.
Very good. Lance, who are your assistant coaches?
My assistant coaches, I've got a long-time assistant, Dave Gorsuch. He's been with me, I want to say, at least over 10 years now, probably. He's one of my assistants. Then we also have Bo Vogelai is a new assistant that we hired just this year. He was the head wrestling coach up in Lee Deadwood for a few years, and then he became our dean of students this year. Got hired on that, so we hired him. And then Rick Jensen is my other assistant coach, and he's been with us for, I want to say we're getting close to 10 years with him as well. So pretty veteran staff, and we got a number of volunteers that help us out. Mike Hagan, William Morrison, Ben Fichter. We got a lot of guys that help our program make it what it is.
Were you a high school and college wrestler yourself?
Yeah, I wrestled in high school, grew up in Phillip, South Dakota here, and obviously wrestling is always one of the big sports there in Phillip. Of course, now, some of our biggest rivals growing up, Wall, South Dakota, now they're kind of combined. It's Phillip area. So they all wrestle together. I graduated from there in 91, went on to Northern State University where I wrestled for 1 year. And then my sophomore year, I was actually redshirting because I tore a knee up and was rehabbing that. And when my third year came around, kind of experienced some discomfort, numbness on about half my body, and come to find out I'd been involved in I thought a minor car bumper, fender bender, and turned out I had cracked a vertebrae in my neck, and it was causing some trouble with my nerves, and I had to give up the collegiate wrestling and wrestling overall for a while. And I was fortunate enough at that time, Aberdeen Roncalli was looking for a head coach. So me and another classmate there, William Schumacher, we were the co-head coaches there in 1994. So I was only about 3 years out of high school and got into the coaching, and that's where the bug bit me, and I've been part of it ever since.
How did you end up at Rapid City Central High School?
Well, that's kind of a funny story there, too. My high school coach was Dan Mahoney, who was actually the head wrestling coach here at Rapid City Central that I followed. He moved from Phillip, South Dakota, down to Arizona for 1 year, and then him and his wife moved back, and he got a teaching and the head job at Rapid City Central, and he'd been trying to get me to come back and coach with him for a couple years. And we finally, my wife and I just had to up and make the move. Basically, then the summer of 98, we kind of moved to Rapid. I'd applied a couple times trying to get into the district, but back in those days, it was really difficult to get a teaching job here. There weren't a lot of openings, and when there were 50 to 60 applicants for about every job. So we moved out here. I did some long-term subbing, got hired on as an assistant coach, and then the next year I actually got a teaching job in the business and computer department at Rapid City Central.
How many kids were you able to take to the state tournament?
We had 10 kids qualify for the state tournament for us. We battled through some injuries this year like we've never had before. Between, I want to say 4 guys, we had 5 different knee injuries on 4 guys. One of them took a place winner out of our lineup right shortly after Christmas, and he was never able to come back for us, Ethan Tebow. And we're excited, for him next year. We'd like to think he'd have been a high placer this year for us. And then Zach Soderlin was another one that he was a qualifier for us the year before. He sustained a concussion and wasn't able to get cleared in time to come back and compete at regions and states. So we took fewer than, I guess, what we were thinking at the beginning of the year when the season started. But to have 6 placers and 6 of them wrestle the way they did, we were really happy with how we finished.
Any state champions there at Rapid City Central?
We did. We had a state champ at 120 pounds, Cale Larson. He'd been a 2-time state runner-up the last couple of years, and was really motivated this year, extremely focused. He was one of the guys that dealt with a little bit of a knee issue, ended up wearing a brace for about the last month and a half of the season, and was battling through some pain and soreness, even at the state tournament. So he wrestled very well. It was probably a benefit to us of the new, they put the duels back into it this year. So they had the dual tournament right in with the individual. And so it ended up being a 3-day tournament. And the individual side of it, as long as the kids kept winning, like Cale, he only wrestled 1 match on Friday and 1 more his final on Saturday. He had 2 on Thursday. So the break there probably did him wonders to be able to ice and rehab his knee even there at the state meet for us.
Congratulations on that state champ. How about the other kids that went to the state tournament?
You bet. The other state placers that we had, TJ Morrison was another finalist for us. He was at 145, wrestled a 2-time defending state champ in the finals there from Vermilion. Really wrestled him well, gave him everything we had. He came up just a little bit short on the scoreboard there. So he had a great state tournament for us. Wyatt Junclaws, he was at 170. He was a defending state champ at 170. We got beat in overtime by Caleb Brink, the kid across town at Rapid City Stevens. And Wyatt, being the senior, being a leader, did exactly what we had hoped he'd do. He had a tremendous number of pins on the season for us, and he pinned his way for 3rd at 170. A couple other guys, Braden Burris, he placed 4th for us at 152. He'd been a multiple state qualifier for us in the past, had just really ran into some tough kids, was always in some really difficult weight classes, and this year really kind of changed his thinking about what he was wanting to do every time he went out there. I think he put a lot of pressure on himself before, and this year it was really fun to see him go out there and just enjoy the sport of wrestling, compete, and let the fur fly, if you want to say. And he did a great job finishing 4th for us at 152. Caden Cray, he's a multiple state place winner for us. He placed 6th at 138. I know that's not near where he was wanting to place. He suffered a severely sprained ankle in his placing match at the region tournament. And he never got back on the mat until that first day of the state meet. And he really had to fight through some excruciating pain. We were taping him repeatedly throughout the day whenever he had a match. So for him to do what he did, even to place 6th, especially at 138, which you talk to a lot of people from top to bottom, might have been one of the toughest weight classes in the state tournament. And then our last state placer for us was Landon Winter. He's a sophomore, wrestling 160. He's probably another 52-pounder for us. But him and Braden Burris, Braden being a senior, he was our 52-pounder, and Landon bumped up and had a great state tournament. Had 2 pins on the state tournament, a major decision. He scored a ton of bonus points for us. So his 7th place finish If you look at his team points, though, he scored just about as much as the guys that placed 4th and 6th and 3rd there for us. So he's a sophomore. We're looking forward to having him back the next 2 years. So we've got 3 guys coming back out of those placers along with the 2 that I told you weren't able to compete this year. So we're excited about what next year brings. And again, pretty happy with where we ended up as a team this year at this year's state tournament.
Got some young kids coming up next year?
We do. We've got a Hayden Bakke kid who filled in for us at 145 when TJ had his knee injuries throughout the year. Our schedule, we have a ton of duels. We actually wrestled, I want to say, 35 duels this year, which is great for the matches. We get to coach every kid at those duels. But what that does is when you have injuries, it kind of forces some younger kids that maybe could use more work on the JV level to get thrown into the fire there a little bit more. And Graydon Bakke stepped up for us, did some great things. I already mentioned Zach Soderlin. He'll be a freshman for us next year. He qualified, like I said, last year as a 7th grader for us. So along with those 2, we've got a great number of 8th graders coming up that are ready to work really hard. They came up after their middle school season this year and really did some good things for us on our JV. So, you have to continually develop those guys. Otherwise, you tend to have a big drop-off. And that's one thing that we really try and pride ourselves on, of always being in the hunt to be in that top 5 or 6 at the state tournament.
How about off-season camps?
We usually try and bring some guys in. There's a lot of guys that Kale and TJ, they do a lot of wrestling and go to camps throughout the summer on their own. We do try. We've brought in the SDSU coaching staff the last few years, whether that was Coach Bono or now Coach Hahn. And then we've also brought in a couple others that we try and put together our own 3 to 5 day camp that we run right at our place. And then probably the biggest thing that we do is our strength and conditioning that we've kind of brought on. We've got a weights and agility program that they do 4 days a week. And then, of course, our open mat that we do 2 nights a week really is what gets these kids to that next level, is putting in the time, because there's no secret to any sport, and wrestling's no different. You got to put the work in. Otherwise, the state tournament will reveal to you who really put all that work in. And even in a lot of cases, the guys who come up short put in a ton of work. So it's just what these kids have to do anymore.
In sports, you got to finish up strong, and that sounds like what you guys did at the state tournament.
We did. We, like I said, probably one of the toughest years we've ever had injury-wise that the kids had to really battle through. The biggest thing I'm probably the most proud of, we didn't have one kid that ever expressed, hey, maybe we shouldn't be going to this big tournament. We went out to a national dual tournament out in Rochester, Minnesota this year that we got invited based on what we did the year before. Well, with all the injuries, a lot of teams will bail out of those things, and our guys, nobody ever once thought about that. So we had the next guy to step in the lineup, and they all competed to the fullest, and I think that's going to breed some really good things for us in the next couple of years.
Lance Pearson, Rapid City Central High School head wrestling coach. And Lance, we really appreciate you taking time to visit with us about the Cobbler wrestling program.
Well, I appreciate it and can't thank you guys enough. Obviously, a lot of sports that are out there and that people are in the front of their mind a little bit more. We like to think wrestling's that way out here West River, and we appreciate your coverage. And anytime that you're looking for something, we'd gladly talk about wrestling and brag about our guys.
Sounds great. Thanks, Lance.
Well, thank you very much, and go Cobblers.